After some reconsideration, I am about to pull this brand new Predator 224 motor that I put on this cart, the go-kart, off and put the original 212cc one that's over there back on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the gas tank on that 212 up a little bit so that fuel line won't get kinked at all anymore, and swap that and keep this good new motor for the golf cart. I have to do some modification no matter which way I do this, and I was going to be putting a new clutch on the on here anyway. I had attempted to use the old clutch off the old one, and that clutch is no good, so I have a new clutch over there. So I'm just going to pull this, throw that one back on, put the new clutch on it, get it all set up and ready to use again with that other motor, and set aside this one. What I'll likely end up doing, I think I mentioned before, is that I'm going to pull this up, and I might even just use that as a remote instead of using the original golf cart gas tank and dealing with the whole putting of a vacuum fuel pump in there. I may just put this original tank up somewhere inside that golf cart in the back and let it gravity feed down to the motor. And I mean, it's a gallon tank. I mean, how much are we going to be moving that golf cart around that we actually have to worry about fueling it up much? You know, I mean, well, if we get 15 miles out of it, I'd be happy out of one tank, and we just have to do it. I'm going to look into see where the best place that I can mount it. I may set up a mounting bracket under here, back where the original fuel lid was. I might try to do a fuel lid again over on that, mount the tank under here, so down below a little bit, if I can find the room to put it where it doesn't interfere with anything. And if not, I'll figure out something else out, and we'll just have to lift up the back to fuel it up, which isn't a big deal. And I don't mind doing that for, you know, it's not like it's going to be out on a golf course all day and they need to run big fuel tanks on it. So that's what the game plan is right now. Like I said, I'll get this one back up, cleaned up, put back on that cart, and definitely going to raise up the tank a little bit if I can. I may have to do something with this front mount here in order to raise that up, because the front one goes through, the other back you can raise up. But I'm going to work on that. Shouldn't be a big deal. I may even just raise the back up just a hair and keep the front coming in that way. I can actually just let it still gravity feed underneath it. Now that we got the cosmetic stuff done, I just tried a quick mock-up of putting this motor in. It didn't go too well. Well, I shouldn't say that. It gave me an idea of what I need to do. I had to pull all that stuff out of the way. Not too big of a deal. I'm temporarily putting a couple blocks under there, and then I'll probably end up with a little bit better setup for that afterwards, but I'm trying to just gauge the height and whatnot. So when I did this and I had the pulley on, I got the belt for the starter lined up with the pulley on that belt, had it on, and then I went and put the correct belt here for the clutch assembly to go to the rear end. It was too small. This belt was too short. It was actually pulling that motor over. So I happened to have this belt lying around for my Polaris ATV, and it's the same exact width belt, and it is longer. So what I'm going to do is put this back in place try to set it back up with the Polaris belt on that to see if that's going to give me a little bit of the extra clearance I need. It'd be nice if that works, because then I can just, if I ever need a new belt, I can just order this same Polaris belt, throw it on there, and it's perfect. So let's give that a try. You know, not always going to succeed the first time, and you can kind of sort of ignore that for now. That's a temporary gas tank setup for this thing using the original tank. I just have it set up so I can have it gravity feed into the motor. Alright, so second time is much better. Clearance is much better over here. I still got some things I can remove if I need to. But the big nice issue is that this Polaris belt is going to work perfect, because I have room to bring this back, to bring this tighten it if I need to. However, it will sit down nice and straight and flush, and not have the issue I had before with the other belt being too short and pulling this whole motor down. It just didn't want to sit. So that gives me now an idea of how I need to start mocking up and raising up this engine. This will actually keep it nice and level. I saw a couple other people who did some 212 conversions. I'm using the 224, but they did the 212 conversion, and they cocked the motor up like that, made some mounts so it would clear the rear end, and I didn't really like that. I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't have any issues. Only thing I need to double check though is that the air breather, if I want to have clearance, it shouldn't be an issue, and if that is an issue, then I could probably do something with a different style air breather. But I'm hoping that we're not going to have a height issue as I look across, because we have to have height to clear those when this comes down. So I think we're going to be good. You know, the only thing I'm worried about is up here, but as this comes down, I'm pretty sure that is going to give me some clearance right about here. And you know, the only way I want to find out is if I put it down, and so that'll be the next thing, is to start lowering that just to see how much room I have after it starts coming below. But I think I'm going to be in good shape. When I put the mount in, I wasn't sure what the best way to do it was going to be, because of the clearance room there with the rear end on a couple spots, and also the generator. So I flipped it upside down so it would be flatter on the bottom, and I figured, that'll give me a little bit more options. I can just drill holes wherever I want to. But now I think I'm seeing that if I flip it back up the way it's supposed to be, and can use the slotted mounts for the engine, it might give me a little bit more wiggle room. So after I pull this back off and then start setting up to where it's actually going to be, I will flip that over and then start mounting things down. I really want to come up with a better gas tank situation. What I'd like to have is maybe one about twice the size of this. I think I showed you before I was going to use the one I had, like a generator one, but I would really love to have one this same width, but just double the capacity right here on top. Mostly because that's where the exhaust is going to come out, and I'm going to have an exhaust come out here, come down, and then an actual muffler that I ordered, and then I kind of procrastinated a little bit and didn't actually fix this rotted spot here. And then after looking at it, I'm like, that's a perfect spot for an exhaust to come out, almost like a side pipe. So I am going to make it so it's an actual side pipe coming out of here for the exhaust that comes out right to here, kind of like the old cars would have right here. So what I probably would like to do is, because the muffler is going to be in there, maybe I'll just make a kind of a like a heat shield or so right over it here, leave a gap, and then have a double tank up here. That way it's got more capacity and everything fits in nice, and then I'll do a better mounting setup for it. But I think that's probably going to be the way to go, because then I could do just a longer setup here, or just move this down a little bit and have it just, only, half of the tank sit on it, and then but have a mount coming from back here to one side of the tank, and a mount from there to the other side of the tank, and then kind of tie it together a little bit with a heat shield. So that's kind of the game plan right now. I just don't know what to use for a tank. See what I can find. I mean, if anybody has any ideas or has done something like that before, man, just throw it down in the comments, and that would help me out immensely. That would be huge. Because right now I'm going to have to sit and hunt for a little bit better gas tank. I apologize for the whirring noises. I got the furnace on right now, and the heater blower going over there too, so it's a little louder than normal. But as I mentioned previously, I ordered that clutch assembly. I ordered the bigger one as far as the shaft goes, because I'm not sure if I want to stick with this Predator motor or go with the bigger one at some point, and I didn't want to order another clutch assembly. The shaft sizes are different, not a big deal. I made a bushing for the inside of there, and what I did was I just machined that bushing out for that 1/4 inch keyway. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, not too bad. That keyway's 1/4 inch on there. The keyway on this smaller Predator is 3/16. So I have key stock coming in today at some point, and I'm going to machine up a new key that goes from the 1/4 inch down to that 3/16, and I just will have to measure out to see, because I made that bushing at 1/4 inch, the pathway going down that bushing. So I'm just gonna have to see what the height is I need to machine up. And I got just a little Harbor Freight, Central Machinery here, little milling machine. Nothing special, but it does the job. Makes it much easier to be able to make the bushings or key stock that I need. And so I'll work on that after I get the key stock. But once I get that bushing, then I can actually put this clutch assembly on there. Basically it should fit just fine. Well, I've got that mounted on the extended height base plate, so that's going to work out perfect. What I do need now is, this is what I was using before for the blocks to get height, to see what I needed to raise it up a little bit more. And what I'm going to do now is I will do a setup cutting off of this old piece of metal I had from a satellite dish. I'll use this, make this base plate, and use spacers, and they come, that plate comes with rubber mounts, so I will rubber mount to use as a spacer. Even though the cart engine, the whole engine assembly is on rubber mounts, it's got like rubber motor mounts down there to help vibration, so technically I really don't need it, but It'll help with a little bit more vibration. It'll also help with raising to the height I need. So I'm going to make 2 at 8" here, get it set up so that I can bolt all of that directly onto that, and then from the bottom, from underneath, I'm gonna put bolts in that can go up, and I will cut some relief slots in here so I can get like access slots, so I can get and put a nut inside, and then use a wrench just to hold it while I tighten. And so hopefully that's going to work out. We're going to find out, because it's kind of an experiment, but it's kind of the best setup I could come up with. At first I was just going to use a 2x6 board, put it down there, mount it, and then work on mounting that to that. But I'd prefer to have an easier method of being able to take it on and off as I want to, and setting something up with metal down there and something I can easily, unbolt and bolt back in. I think that's going to work out a little better. I probably should have filmed this portion, but nah, I'd have real machinists and metalworking guys just swearing at this screen. So yeah, I mean, I do things my way, right or wrong, but it worked out perfect. I used my little milling machine here. I just pulled out the milling chuck there and put the regular drill chuck back in, and drilled 2 holes with that big bit, and now I just filed it all down. So now I have access to those two holes. What I'm going to do now is, I've already marked off where these are and what they're for, driver's front, passenger's front, and I'm going to put the bolts in, mount these down, and then I'm going to set that engine back in with the pulley so everything's lined up, and then I'll take a Sharpie and I will draw right around the base, and from there I can measure and know exactly where to drill the little holes to mount this. And then once I mount it to that and set it back in here, I should be able to put those bolts back in from underneath and tighten them up, and that will basically mount that motor in there for good. So for anybody who hasn't suffered through this type of access to bolts and nuts before, I use just a very small, you can see the tip is very small in that magnet, low powered magnet, and then use that to slide the nut in there. And then on the bolt side, just use a little small extension with a shallow socket, slide it up from the bottom. You're going to save yourself a ton of swearing, but ton of frustration. Makes it much easier. One of these is giving a kind of a hard time using the magnet, so I reverted back to my old method of little tape over the end of a box wrench. It holds a nut in place, slide it till you get the nut started, and then you just pull it right out. It actually, in spots that you can get access to easily, it's easier doing this. The magnet's nice because I was able to just move around where I needed to and just get the bolt started. But that back one was just real difficult, so I ended up going back to this. All right, got the mounts in, and the one side is bolted down. The other side, I'm going to have to mark out and adjust the holes just a little bit. And once I do that, and then tighten it down, this little bit of offness where you can see the motor's kicked just a little teeny bit, that will straighten this out on the pulley. The motor will straighten back out here, and then I won't have to worry about the belts getting kind of chewed up a little bit. I mean, it's not off enough to throw the belt, but it could get chewed up. And this should be okay. The Polaris belt on here, it's got enough, I think, slack just now. I may adjust that a hair too, but it's got enough slack right now for the clutch to move without moving the rear end. So the starter and then the motor will turn. I may give it just a little bit more of a leeway there. I may just give it just a teeny bit more slack in that belt. I don't think it's going to need too much. And other than that, we are pretty tightened up. But I am going to have to pull it all off again, and then after I adjust where the holes on this side, because I'm going to have to drill them out just a little bit more. But that will basically give me the ability to move this where I want to, and then tighten it all down. But I'm pretty happy for how it came out, just eyeballing most of the stuff. And got a ton of clearance off the back, which makes me happy off this rear end, because I don't know when it comes down to changing out this with the G2 rear end, just how much crap I'm going to have back there that may interfere with the setup I already have. I'm hoping it's not going to have much. I wouldn't think there would be too much difference between the two dimensional, and others have said that as long as you just go ahead and change the axles, put these stock axles onto the G2 rear end, that everything will line up, almost on the money. But, you know how it is when everyone says something. I'm sure there'll be a little bit monkeying we got to do. But for now, I'm more worried about just getting this in place and running with the current rear end. Well, I just took the time to hook that starter generator all back up, hook up the battery, all the wiring I went through, anything that wasn't going to be used, I knew wasn't needed, I taped off just to be sure. I put the CDI box back in, wasn't sure if I was going to need it, but couldn't hurt. So already tested it and ended up making sure that reverse was not going to work. So in this case, by trial and error of choosing which, I first took these terminals off the solenoids, the ones that went to the starter, figuring, hey, if I just pull one off, then it'll only do forward. These both have to be connected for that for that starter to work. So then back here we have two wires, one blue, one yellow. One is forward, one is reverse. And I guess it depends on whether or not yours is stock or if it's aftermarket. These look like they're aftermarket as to which is which, or how it was wired up. So in this case, trial and error again. Yellow was forward, blue was reverse. I pulled the blue off, taped it. So now it's not possible for someone to try to start this motor in reverse, only forward. So that's kind of what I wanted. However, as you can see with my plastic repair gun over there, yeah, I screwed up. I didn't make sure that starter was propped up a little bit. So when it fired up the first time in forward, the plastic blades clipped the little metal over here. So not a huge deal, because two things. One, I can buy a replacement. so I'm not too worried about that. And two, and I've used this gun here in another video when I was doing the General Lee cart. This thing works amazing, absolutely amazing, and it's a cheap kit. Now, as you can see, I already did this blade, and then I'll just snip those off, and I'll probably put a small layer of epoxy over that at the end of that. But this one, it's a little bit more rough, and so I'm not sure if I'm going to have to replace this whole setup here. But it's pretty simple. You just take these little clips they give you, these little staple type things, and I'm going to set this tripod up here so you can see. And then you just put your staple in here into the end of the gun. And this whole kit, and it comes with a whole bunch of crap, you know, a whole bunch of different staples, a little thing of snips and stuff. So then you get set it up in between the brake, set it on there, hold it in place the best you can, and then you push this trigger, and you're going to see it start smoking, and it starts melting into the plastic. And then when you get to the point, you leave it with the trigger off for good 5 seconds, and then the staple slides right out. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to put another staple here, and then I'm going to they have ones that are made for corners that have like this little V shape, and this thing works pisser. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to glue or epoxy plastic before, and it just doesn't work out well because there's no strength anymore. These little staples puts the strength back in the plastic. So that's it. So I'm at the point now where I'm actually all good with the motor. The mount's done. The motor's ready to be put back in. This was the big thing, making sure I could test that, get that so it's going to spin forward, be able to start the motor. I won't be doing any testing on that motor yet until I can get a bunch more things tidied up and get this thing up on jack stands, just in case when I start this thing up, the clutch needs to be either adjusted or the belts need to be adjusted, and it wants to just go, you know, even before you're giving it enough gas to activate the clutch. Okay, got some progress. So got the new keyway machined up out of 1/2 inch stock, and it had to be taller than a standard 1/4 inch to 3/16 keyway adapter, so I had to make one. Just took a little bit of time, and already put it in, and I forgot to actually, you know, take a video of the keyway itself. But it's a keyway, so no big deal. Keyway fits in there now, and now that bushing is super tight. So I got the clutch on there. I'm waiting for a bolt. I had to special order the bolt. None of my local places here had the bolts for this shaft that was long enough. I think I ordered a 6 inch and a 6.5 inch. We'll see which one. And I just got this engine all in and lined up, and that's about as good as it's going to get as far as belt alignment. I don't think we're going to have any issues whatsoever. It has the rubber mounts like I talked about before. I added the rubber mounts in here as well because these Predator motors tend to shake a little bit. I mean, it's basically a lawnmower and generator or whatever motors. So that's done. Now I need to work on the bracket I'm making here, because that didn't have a bracket for the starter generator on it. The old setup was some rigged up thing that was just a bolt, kind of adjustable to the engine. My other cart has an actual bracket. This one didn't have it. So now I'm making up stuff, a bracket, with just some stuff I had left over you know, just a little square. I mean, a 90 piece here. It was actually, I think, it was for a switch for like a computer switch and for rack mount. And this was part of a adjustable piece here. Here's the other piece I cut off that went onto a little satellite dish, the old Dish Network crap. So made this. I just need to trim a little bit off right here so it doesn't hit the generator, and then that gets bolted down to the floor in there, and then this gets bolted onto here and then bolted on the generator, so you can turn it and adjust, and then basically adjust the belt. But then that pretty much ties that up. Once that's done, then it's a matter of trying it out, testing it. I'll put the temporary gas tank setup back in after I kind of painted everything up to make it look halfway decent. Because, you know, temporary could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be 2 years, who knows. I definitely need more capacity though for fuel. So probably don't think it's going to be a 2-year temporary fix, but yeah, even if it's going to be a 2-month or 6-month, I'd rather have it look halfway decent. But we are getting close to having this thing fired up and at least running in forward.